tools team over the last year, and also give you some sneak peeks at some features that are coming up.
Excellent. So let's start with everyone's favorite tool, the emulator. So we're well aware that there's been a lot of problems, especially on emulator running larger configuration like tablet sizes, and we've been working on fixing that. Now, last year at I/O, I demoed a prototype of hardware.gl, and I'm very happy that finally we released that a few months ago. So if you're running ICS and above, and if you enable GPU support in the AVD Creation dialog, you will be able to use your computer GPU to actually do the rendering. The problem is that our software rendering using ARM code that's being interpreted into x86 was really not fast enough for higher resolution. So that helps for general interactivity in the emulator, but that doesn't really help if you have an application that does a lot of computation. To help with that, Intel contributed into the OSP project support for virtualization mode when running an x86-based system image. And so we already had that for Linux, but they added support for Windows and for Mac. They've released Jelly Bean system images and ICS system images. No, not Jelly Bean, Gingerbread and ICS. We're working with them for the Jelly Bean. So if you're using that, you will see that the emulator is much faster. And I'm going to give you a quick demonstration a little bit. First, let's talk about hardware emulation. That's the second part about the emulator. We've had different strategies about supporting hardware. So since basically 1.0, we had telephony support. So to support telephony in the emulator, we would use another tool, DDMS or another emulator, and we would allow you to initiate call or send SMS into the emulator. Then about a year ago, we started really using actual hardware to emulate hardware into the emulator. First, we started with webcam support. So if you have a USB webcam or if you have a webcam directly into your laptop, you can use that to input a video stream into the emulator. And if you use the camera application, you will actually see the output of your webcam. Starting more recently, we decided that those devices, they have a lot of hardware that you don't find anywhere else. Sensors like accelerometer, compass, gyroscopes, or things like multi-touch screens, you don't really have that on your random computer. So we decided to start using that. And so using a device tethered through a USB cable, we're starting to send some of that information back into the emulator. So let's see what that looks like. So I have an emulator here. This is running a regular 10-inch tablet screen. It's a 1280 by 800. It doesn't look great because it's a little bit scaled so that it fits on screen. This is running ICS with GPU on and with x86. As you can see, it's very, very smooth. If we go into the all apps, normally it's smooth. There we go. It really follows very well your interactivity. So, no, that's not what I'm going to do. There we go. So, I encourage you to try it. It works very well. So let's look at touch input. So as you can see here, when I click somewhere, there's a small white dot. That's a touch feedback, and you can enable that in the settings if you go into developer options. So I have a phone here running a small application that's packaged with the SDK so that you can compile it and install it on your own application. And then I can start swiping. I'm not touching my laptop. I'm just touching my phone. So doing that with just one touch, it's pretty easy. But yes, there's sensor also sometimes, and there's an issue here. That's OK. I'll just do it that way. It may rotate while I'm doing it. We're still working to disable that. So that's the pointer location in DevTools. Now, I can do 2 touches, 3 touches, 4 touches, 5 touches, as many really as your device will support. And regularly, a device like that will do 10 touches. So if I could actually, I would try to put all of my fingers, but that's
good if you're developing a ninja game, right?
Yes, exactly. If you want to do like, a claw type of attacks or something like that, that would be perfect. So that's the emulator. Really, our goal here is to let you try on any type of form factor that you don't necessarily own, and we don't expect you to buy every device out there. We really want you to be able to try your application on the emulator no matter what type of hardware your application is using. And so we're going to work to improve even more the hardware support. So that means that we want you to be able to create emulators to really emulate any kind of devices. And to help with that, I'm going to show you something that we just started working on. I forgot to clear that up. So this is the AVD Creation Manager. So AVD stands for Android Virtual Device, and it's really like a configuration of the emulator to simulate a particular device. So normally you would enter a API level, and we're going to completely revamp that device, but we just added that particular menu here where you have a bunch of devices. And we're going to work with OEMs to make sure that this is populated with as many devices as we can. So here, let's say you want to create an emulator that emulates exactly a Nexus 7, not that any of you actually need that anymore. So you click here, and here all the properties, all the hardware is set up for you. This is going to be exactly a Nexus 7, the proper density, the proper resolution, like the resolution is entered here, and it will be done for you. So I'm going to give it a name just here and just create it. I could start it, but I'm not going to do it. So I have a second one since I already had a first one. So one thing that we added is that you may have noticed those generics devices, and those were present before in the layout editor. And so since we're doing that, we figured that we may as well also show you in the new editor, when you choose a device here, we just show you your AVD here directly. And when I choose the AVD that I just created, since we know that it was created to match a Nexus 7, then we just render it as if it was on a Nexus 7. All right, so that's the new editor, or at least part of it. So Tor, why don't you tell us a bit more about that new layout editor?
All right, so actually I'm going to defer the layout editor and start with sort of the basic editing that we've improved over the last year. So hopefully you all know that in Java files, in Eclipse, you can press Control-O to open up this quick outline and do quick filtering to navigate to a method. We made that work better in XML files now. So if I'm, for example, in this layout file and I'm looking for button 5, I can type B, wildcard 5, and I'm right there. You can also use Control-Shift-P to jump between matching tags, and we've enhanced the code completion to work with custom views. This is particularly useful. Let me just show it. So control space, and you can see here we pick up on the app namespace. We even find the documentation for your custom stylables and show it to you. So that hopefully will make that easier. My favorite part, though, in XML editing is the new formatter. So if you look at this file here, this is what you used to get when you reformatted the files out of the box. And if I do this now, you can see I get a much cleaner layout. And this is not just adjusting indentation. It's also, for example, reordering attributes. So if I put the height before the width and maybe the ID down here, maybe mess up the indentation a bit too, you can see it puts things back in the right order. Not that Android care what the order is, but this is sort of the style that we recommend and we follow in all of our tutorials. And the other thing you see here is that for layouts, we prefer to have a blank line between all the elements and one attribute per line. So you can use other editors and set it up to format it the same way. But what's unique about this is that if I switch to, for example, a strings file, like this one, and I press Control-Shift-F here, you can see we do something totally different. Here we're formatting it the way that we think string files should be formatted, which is one string per line, unless you're dealing with something like a plural. And of course, if I go to a manifest file, there's yet other heuristics which apply, which is, hey, let's put the permissions in one block, and let's treat the application element as more like a layout tag. So I don't type indentation anymore. Instead of pressing the tab key, no matter where I am, whatever I've copied or anything like that, I just press Control-Shift-F, and it just put things back in order. All right. The next thing I want to show you is the revamped wizards. So if I open up the new wizard, you can see that we have a bunch of new items in this list. And the list is going to get longer, by the way. We mostly worked on infrastructure at this point. So this is what the new project wizard looks like now. It's completely different because it's been rewritten. And let's type in an application name, Google I/O demo. So notice that as I'm moving the focus between these text fields, on the bottom here, we have explanations. So for example, when you get to the package name, we tell you, please choose carefully because you're going to have to stick with this package name forever. And likewise, we explain the difference between the build target and the min SDK version, which we used to just ask, what number do you want? Now we're showing you code names and version numbers and everything. You also have the option of creating a custom icon, and that happens on the second page. So this is the Asset Studio. So here we can choose between some clip art. You can also just start with some random text. So I can choose IO, maybe pick a different shape, add some padding. More likely, though, you'll probably have some project or company logo you want to use. So you can go and fetch that image. So I'm going to pick an IO logo here and put it in. And as you can see, it's now going to create different density versions of this icon. And it also gives the sort of a standard shading treatment. So this is even more useful when you're dealing with things like notification icons and action bar icons. And we're going to show that in a bit more detail in the layout talk tomorrow. So on the third page, I get to choose what to put into the project. So we no longer just create this empty project. I can choose between a master detail flow skeleton, which will create a tablet version where you have details on the left, on the right, and a sort of a chooser thing on the left. Or I can create among a set of blank activities. So by default, I can get tabs, I can get swiping plus title strip, drop down. Now, sadly, right now, this requires ice cream sandwich, but we're really hard at work at backporting all this. And so ASAP, this hopefully will also generate compatibility codes. This will work on older devices. All right, so when I press finish, this is going to create the project and open the default layout. As you can see, there it is. Let me show you what happens when I add into an existing project. So I invoke the new wizard again, choose Add Activity, and I'm going to have to choose a unique name. When I hit Next now, I get this preview. Let me maximize it. So you can see that what we're doing here is we're not just creating a new activity class. We're adding registration into the manifest. We're adding resources into the string file, and so forth. So let's talk about the layout editor a bit. So when you're editing layouts, you don't really need to be spending your precious screen real estate on the package explorer, the output window, and so forth. So luckily, Eclipse supports the concept of maximizing the editor, Control-M, which is really useful when you're editing Java code, but it's now pretty useful in the layout editor as well. So if I press Control-M, you can see that not only do we get rid of this other stuff, but we also include a structure view and a property sheet inside the layout editor now. And these are configurable, so I can, for example, drag the structure to the bottom here. This is useful if I'm trying to do a landscape orientation like this. And I can also give myself more space by minimizing, for example, the palette. So now that it sits over there, I can just hover over it. I can drag out the widget that I need. And when I do that, it goes away and gives me back all the space I want to see my layout in. Probably the most important change is the property sheet, which has been completely revamped. So you can see if I select something here, first of all, if I hover, it'll show me the documentation for the property that I'm about to edit. If it's a Boolean property, I can just click it to cycle through the values true, false, and not set. And when you look at the properties here, you can see actually, you might not be able to see because this font is pretty small, but just trust me that there's blue colors for things that you've set, and we're also showing inherited attributes when possible. So for example, it's OK. You can clap. You can see here the inherited color for text link is blue. And the way most property sheet implementations work is that they call the getter and they ask, what is your color? And then they can display it. In Android, we can't do that because many XML attributes don't actually have a corresponding getter. So what we've done, what Xav has done, is to intercept the value lookup. And that gives us something pretty cool, which is that, look, we can show you that this is not just blue, but this is actually the resource Android color hollow blue light. And likewise, we know the actual style for the text appearance. We are showing these attributes in groups. So you can see we have nesting here with the layout attributes together. The text view attributes are all together. And we're showing the important properties in bold. And that's particularly useful if you switch to an alphabetical order. So if you're looking for a particular name property by name, you can switch to that order. And we're also hiding a lot of attributes because we just ran some statistics on a bunch of code bases and found out that there's a lot of attributes that are never actually set. And you can expose them if you want through this filter right here. Now you can see there's a bunch of grayed out italics properties here. If I choose this edit text, you can see something interesting. We also preview drawables. So an edit text has an actual attribute to set the icon that's shown when you are selecting, and it's right there, and you can see we're previewing it for you. All right, let's set some actual properties with this property sheet. So let me switch back from alphabetical order. All right, so hello, Google I/O. And I'm going to set the color. And notice that we do code completion on resources, which is kind of handy. And I'm going to set the size to 36, not dips, but SPs. And you can invoke customizers as well. So one other cool thing we've added is that we show the resolved values. So if you look where I'm pointing at here, as I'm selecting different resources, you can see what the current resolved value of this attribute is. And this works not just for dimensions, but strings as well. All right, so that's the property sheet. You can see that we have these weird guidelines in the layout editor here. That's because this is the relative layout. And last year at I/O, we previewed this relative layout support. And it's now basically done. And so if I'm dragging in here, you can see we've enhanced it a bit more. In addition to showing guidelines, we have this tooltip, which is trying to stay out of the way for the constraints being shown. But it shows me what it is it's displaying. So this year, we have a preview of another layout that came out in Ice Cream Sandwich, the grid layout. So we're trying to go for the same tools experience that you have with relative layout, which is that as you're dragging, you get these guidelines. But we're trying to go one step further. And you can see these red lines. This is something that appears in a lot of the internal UI specs at Google. And this is showing what the intended spacing is supposed to be between these things. So this is a feature that's not done, but we're working on it. And we're going to bring that back to all the other layouts as well to try to help you get sort of the recommended UI look for all these things. All right, let me show you Fragment support. Actually, I brought up the wrong layout. So this is the Google I/O app, and it is using fragments. And the key thing about this layout is that this is only organizing how these fragments will appear. It's relative to each other. It's not controlling what's inside the fragment at all. That obviously is controlled by Java code at runtime. So there could be different layouts showing up depending on the context. So we give you a way to, at design time, pick which one it is you want to work with. So we basically look at the class, figure out, well, what layouts are you referring to, and we offer them here. So you can see that in this layout, maybe I want to show the waiting for sync. Here we have some various banners shown at the bottom. In the middle, there's a list view. And on the right, there's several options. So I'm going to choose this one. So you can see this is basically what this app looks like when you run, but we can work on editing the overall structure. And we can also go in and edit the internals. So if I do a swipe select, you can see this is the outer layout. But if I double-click here, I can go to the inner fragment layout and edit just that. So now I can go into the property sheet and change the text to, for example, be patient or something like that. All right, let's save and exit that. Now, you can also work with new fragments on your own. It's pretty easy. So if I delete the fragment we used to have there, now we just have a normal layout that you're familiar with. The way you insert a fragment is to just go to the palette, find the fragment tag, and drag it onto your layout. Then we pop up this dialog asking, well, which fragment class do you want? And you can actually go and create a new one right here with the Create New button on the bottom. I'm just going to pick an existing one for now. And again, choose something to show at design time. And there it is. All right. So the last thing I want to show in the layout editor is the new configuration chooser. So I've already shown you that you can flip orientations very easily through the orientation toggle, and you can obviously choose between other things here as well, such as the UI mode and the night mode. And Xav already showed you how to switch different screen sizes, so I can see how this layout will look like in a tablet orientation, for example, or tablet size, I mean. We also let you choose between themes here. So we've organized them so you can easily pick the themes that you have defined in your project, or the themes you have in your manifest, or Holo themes or the Holo Light themes. This used to be one giant list, and it's hopefully a bit easier to work with now. We also have a new thing here. This is the activity chooser. So why would a layout have an associated activity? Well, we haven't needed it until now, but we're starting to. So right now, we're using this to figure out which theme to default your layout to render with, because in your manifest is where you're declaring theme associations, and that's based on the manifest. But in the next release, hopefully, we're going to use this to also be able to render your action bar items inline. So we're going to look at the associated activity, figure out what the menu is, and render it right there. And there might be other features as well. Now, we also have a locale chooser. So this shows you basically the locale to have. And we have flags as well. This is based on a very simple heuristic mapping from language to country flag. So I hope there are no obvious mistakes. I don't want to start some kind of an international incident here. File a bug if you see something really obviously wrong. And so obviously I can choose a language here and we'll re-render with that other language. And finally, you can choose a different rendering target to see what this looks like on a different platform. So everything I've shown you so far is in ADT 20, which we shipped yesterday. But now I'm about to show you something I'm really excited about, which is a new feature that we're working on. And this is something we're calling multi-configuration editing. So I don't really know how to start, so I'm just going to show you. I'm going to say generate default thumbnails. So what I did here was, this is showing what this layout is going to look like with a different theme, in a different language, different screen size, different orientation. And the key part about this is that if I edit this, these guys are staying in sync. And I can obviously switch between them to see, what does this look like? I can go back. I can zoom in on something if I want to see them, in a larger dimension to see what's going on. And the key part about this also is that I get to choose what these things are. So if I'm, for example, really interested in supporting French, because French is the best language, right, Zav?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, oui.
All right. I should have gone for the Brazil cheap shot, but I didn't do that. So I can now pick French, and I can go add a thumbnail. And see, now it's showing up over here, showing me this in French. And as I go back to the default, you can see this one stays showing me what this looks like in French. I don't know if you can see that. It might be tricky. Give it some more room here. So this is basically now showing me persistent French preview. All right. So that's just, we generate some default thumbnails for you. You can also add your own. And we have some other ones. Look at this. Preview all screen sizes. Let me get myself some more screen space. This is showing the layout across all the screen sizes that I care about. And preview all locales. So here we have a rendering of what this looks like across a bunch of different languages. And you can see that as I'm editing this, these things immediately start rendering to whatever the current layout looks like. And I can obviously, I don't know if you can tell, but something looks wrong here. Let me zoom in a bit more so it's easier to see from your perspective. You can see that something looks wrong here. Let me zoom in so you can see. This button is too high compared to this one. So I could obviously zoom in like this, or we can just switch to it, right? And we can see what's going on. So this feature, I think, is going to be immensely useful. You can basically make your edits and simultaneously keep an eye on what this is going to look like across screen sizes, languages, any configuration parameter you care about.
So one thing that's really interesting here is that we show you language, but it's really an overlay of the main configuration, so that if you switch to something else.
Yes, if I switch to a dark action bar theme, it's now showing the dark action bar theme in these other languages. And I can switch orientation. It's now showing me the other orientation. So yeah, this is I think this is going to be really useful. So I'm very excited about finishing it. All right. So the last thing I want to show you is Lint. So you might have noticed, if you look very carefully, you might have noticed, and if you're sitting near the front, you might have noticed these little warning icons showing up on top of the layout. This thing. What's that? We have a new tool in the Android tools called Lint, which is basically a bug checker. It looks through your code, your Java files, your XML files, your ping files, even your ProGuard files, and looks for errors. And it cross-correlates things to make sure that there aren't problems. So we look for correctness issues, usability issues, performance issues. Here's an example of usability issue. If I hover over this, you can see we get a tooltip on the bottom. So we're always putting the tooltips on the bottom so they're not on top of the layout, because this could get really old really quickly if we kept putting up tooltips on top of your design. So this is showing that the button order is wrong. Since we're targeting API 14 or higher, the OK button should be on the right. So when I do that, the error goes away. So we are actually running Lint incrementally for every UI action on this layout. And if I add some more errors here, let's throw in some buttons, for example. You can see there's a counter up in the right here. Does it look familiar? So this one is basically incrementing and showing you when you have no errors, it disappears. But it's saying I have 2 issues now, and these are basically both, there's a hard-coded string here. So we run lint incremental in every UI action. We also run it on every save. So if I'm in an XML file, and I find if I were to like hard-code this string here and say cancel, the minute I hit save, you can see I get a warning here saying there's an issue. You should use a string resource here. This is not just for XML files. If I switch to a Java file, and let's go and create a toast. Toast dot, come on, make text. Context, hello, and 1. The minute I save, you can see it tells us, did you forget to call show on this? I don't know if anyone's done that, but it's So we run lint incrementally when we can, but there are certain kinds of checks that require global analysis. We can't do it incrementally. For example, finding unused resources. That requires looking at all declarations and all references. So the way you run lint on the whole project is to go to the toolbar where we have this lint action, and I can run lint on all projects or just a particular project. And when I do that, you can see we open this window on the bottom here, lint warnings. And here we've collapsed it as much as possible. I can expand it if I want, but we're showing 1 item per type of issue. And as I select these, you get a fuller description, because it's really hard to explain a problem to a user in less than 80 characters. So this is the longer, you can get the fuller explanation, and sometimes there's more information as well. So let's take a look at some of these errors. If I double click, you can see we jump right to it. Here it's saying there's a problem where in the XML, we can jump to it. In XML, this is a button, and that is not compatible with the cast to toggle button. So it's cross-referencing XML and Java. Likewise, we have a string formatter call here where we're passing a string as a second formatting argument. And if we look at that actual string, you can see that it's actually supposed to be an integer. Here's a good one. Here's a call to set the text color. We're passing in the color black. This compiles just fine. So what's the problem? Well, we're passing a resource ID, not the actual RGB triplet. These are both ints, so it compiles just fine. But it's a subtle problem, and so we found this in our own code too as well, unfortunately. And in the keynote yesterday, you learned about how to increase the amount of butter in your diet. We have some lint checks here to help you sort of avoid jitter. So what you don't want to do is unconditionally allocate objects in any draw calls or on-measure calls. So we look for that, calling create bitmap. If you do put conditional logic around it, lint should be quiet about it. Now, in the summary here, you see light bulbs. I don't know if you can see it, so I'm going to zoom in again. There's light bulbs next to some of these warnings. And this is basically telling you we have an automatic quick fix for it. So for example, it says here that this text field does not specify input type or a hint. I can either press the fix icon here, or I can use a quick fix while I'm editing. And we have explanation of the issue. I run the quick fix, and it inserts the correct fix. I hit Control-Shift-F to just clean things up again. The other thing I can do is suppress issues. So let's say that I don't care about hard-coded text because I only want to support French. Yes. We see a theme here. If I invoke Control-1 to invoke the quick fix, there's actually a add ignore hard-coded to element here. This lets me suppress this issue. So if I select this, you can see it actually adds a ignore element on the specific type of issue. This can also say all or be a comma-separated list of other things I don't care about. And I can move this attribute up to the root if I wanted to suppress it for the whole file. So the tools namespace is special. This is something that was added, I think, in tools 18. And this is basically going to be ignored by AAPT. So anything in this namespace, there's no penalty whatsoever. It does not make it into the APK. But it's great for us. We can store metadata this way now, not using comments like we used to. So the ability to suppress errors is not just for XML files. If I go over to a Java file, I can do the same thing there. So if I invoke Control-1, I have a bunch of suppressed lints, and this is using annotations. All right, so I want to show one more thing here. I assume many of you are trying to target not just the very latest version of Android. And so you always have a choice. Do you want to build your app against the oldest platform you're supporting? That's good because it means you're not going to accidentally use any APIs that aren't supported everywhere. But it's bad because you have to use reflection to access anything newer, and that's really cumbersome. The other choice is to compile against the very latest version of the Android SDK. The problem then is that what if you accidentally use an API that isn't supported? You're going to have a runtime error. So we now have a solution for that with Lint, which basically lets you have the best of both worlds. Now you should compile against the latest target, and then Lint will tell you when you have some kind of an illegal API reference. So I'm going to show that here by calling get action bar, and we'll assign it to this. All right, let me save. OK. So now, after I saved, it's coming up with an error, and it's saying that this class requires API 11, and that this method call here requires API 11. And we're trying to target 5. So the error message says exactly what the problem is. And so you can basically make sure that this code is then only called on a path that is guarded with some kind of a version check. And once you've done that, you can say, I know this class will only be called when we know the API is 11. So I can use the new target API annotation to basically mark this as being clean for Lint. All right. The last thing I want to show you is a preview of a new Lint check that we're working on. So I'm going to open up the Lint preferences dialog. This is showing all the Lint errors. So we have about 100 of them right now that we're checking, and this is increasing in every release. So make sure you keep updating. In this build, I have a special Lint check, which is disabled by default, but I'm going to enable it now. This is called missing permission. All right, so I'm now going to go into this class again, and I'm going to innocently create a new socket. All right, so I got to fix the import. And now I get a new warning here saying, this requires internet permission, which I don't have. So if I then go to the Lint window and say, fix this, it'll open up the manifest file and add the internet permission for me. And this checks all the libraries I'm using as well. All right. So that check does, however, require a really good permission database, which we're working on. So this is not going to be out in the next couple of months. It's a little bit longer-term goal, but I hope this will be useful. All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Toro. All right, let's talk a little bit about debugging tools. So in 20 that we just released yesterday, we added a few new tools. The first one that we added is a tool called Tracer for OpenGLES. And as its name indicates, it's going to help you trace your OpenGL calls. So it's very useful if you're using an engine that's doing GL call for you and you don't know exactly what's going on. It's working on Jelly Bean and only on devices. I don't think it works on Emulator. And it's available as an Eclipse plugin, and it's available as a standalone application. Now, the standalone application, when we developed it, we realized that we are starting to have quite a few standalone applications, DDMS, TraceView, Xavier. Some of their UI are kind of crappy. They're not very configurable, let's say. So we decided to just revamp that and integrate all of them into a single application. We are basing that on the plugins that we have for Eclipse. So we use a RCP-based application. That's the Eclipse Rich Client Platform. So that you can have, you can configure your windows to look like you want them to look, so it will be much better. The second tool that we're adding, which we actually showed very quickly at the keynote yesterday, is Systrace. This is a very low-level tracing tool, and I will show you an output and show you a few things in there. And then the third thing that we're adding is the first beta version of the NDK support in Eclipse. So we have support for building. So as you edit your JNI code, it will automatically get compiled and put into the right place. And we have debugging support so that you have a launch configuration. And we start GDB on the device. We do all the things. And then if you have breakpoint, we just stop on there. So let's do a quick demo of. So I'm in my SDK here. So the monitor, the Android device monitor, which is the tool that regroups everything, is under tools. It's called monitor. We still have the other ones, so as we transition, we'll remove the other ones, but DDMS is still there, TraceView is still there. We have a nice splash screen.
Thanks, Roman.
Yes, he's here. And there we go. That's not what I wanted, but well, let's show it again. OK, so this is TraceView. So you have DDMS here. There we go. So it looks like the DDMS that you may already be using, except that if you really don't care about emulator control, you can just go and close it. You can move things around. So if you have ever used Eclipse, it's basically the same view system. And then we have some new tool in there that you should look at. We have like the network statistics. I think Jeff Sharkey is doing a demo where he will show that, so you should definitely try to see that. And then here at the top right, you have the different tools. So hierarchy viewer is here, and then the tracer for OpenGL is here. So I have still my device here, and I'm going to start tracing a tool. So the way the tool works is that it's meant to work on any chipset out there. There are some GL debugger currently available, but they are generally tied to a particular chipset. And so we wanted to do something that would work on any devices so that whatever devices you have, that will work. This works whether you're using Java bindings or whether you're using native APIs. It sits just above the driver in the GL library. And what we do is that we intercept every code that is done to the driver, and then we start building a separate state. Because of that, and because we can't query the driver to actually get the information about the context, we have to basically start the application in a certain way. So if you have an application that's already started, you will have to quit it and then start it again. So you click here, and then so here I'm going to start the settings application. You can select your device here, which application. If you want to start a particular activity, you can do that too. And then here you have a couple of options. So by default, we're going to get every GL call that you're doing, but sometimes you actually want to see what you're drawing. So those checkboxes allow you to choose what you want us to gather for you. By default, really, you want to get the result of each frame, so what happened after a swap buffer. In some case, you may want to see the result of every GL draw. That's going to be significantly slower because we have to send them back from the device onto the application. So I recommend not doing it all the time. There's another way after. And then you decide where you're going to set the trace file. So let's trace a very simple session into the setting app. So I'm going to click trace. There we go. So I'm going to start tracing. You can see that it's starting to collect frame. And as I said earlier, if you want to get the result of every GL draw, just before you do an action, enable it here, then do your action, and then stop it. So I probably have enough data to show you that. So let's do stop tracing, and let's open it. It's in desktop here. OK. Let's see. So what you have here, so at the top, you have the actual frames. So if we look here, you have the actual drawing of the frame normally. There we go. So this is what was drawn by the application. And as I scroll, we should start seeing me basically scrolling through the setting application. Here, below that, you actually have the construction of each frames. So you start with the GL viewport, and then you end all the way at the end with a swap buffer. And through all those calls, you can look at your GL context here. Everything that's in blue means that it's what changed from one call to another. So if I start here, and I change, you'll see what changed on every call, And then you can also, go look at something, for example. Let's just organize that to it here, since we can. You can see your shaders, you can see your vertex, you can see your textures, everything. You can also do, yes. No, there we go. You can do search. So one thing that you've seen, oh, it's collapsed. There we go. So one thing that you may have noticed here is that there's some kind of hierarchy going on. So we added some extension to GL. The first one is you can put a marker with a particular string, and then it will show up here. So if you want to say, hey, I'm starting to do that, and I'm done doing that, you can put 2 markers, and then you can search on that and see it. And the other option is to actually push and pop to and from a stack. So this is what happens here. This is the regular view framework. It's rendering with GL. So every time it enters a new view group, it says, hey, I'm a linear layout. And then, so it does a push, and then every children say, I'm a text view, I'm a button, or whatever, and then when they stop drawing, they pop from the stack, and then they will show up here. So if you have your own game engine or anything like that, and you want to start doing some hierarchy display here, you can definitely use those extensions. So that is GL Tracer. The next tool that I want to show you is the output of trace. So we show it briefly during the keynote, I'm just going to show you a very quick demo. Romagi and Chet House will actually do a more in-depth look at that in their session at 2:45, I believe, today. So I encourage you to go and see that. So it's a system-level trace. You can see everything that happens on your CPU. You can see, the binder thread for inter-process communication. You can see the vsync. You can see the surface flinker. You can really see everything. It's very low level, and it can really get stuff into a lot of details. So if you look here, I'm showing about 5 seconds, and then you can start zooming into things and see really what happens all the way down to very short events, like this particular event here, whatever that was, surface flinger for 0.06 milliseconds. So you can click on any blocks of color to see exactly, what am I doing? Oh, there we go. To see exactly what was going on, what it was, how long it took. You can do selection to see exactly what happened somewhere, to see how many time it occurred, and the speed. So again, Roma and Chet's.
If you have some kind of jitter, you want to use this to figure out why.
So trace view is still there, and if you just want to trace, to see exactly how long each method is going and all of that, trace view is great for that. If you want to see really what happens at the system level, systrace is the way to do it. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Android projects. So you're creating complex application. Every time I talk to developer, I'm always amazed by what you guys are doing. You're telling me, hey, I'm using 20 library project. I have 100 jars or something like that. So you're really pushing our build system to the limit. And we really want to help you. We know that you want to share code and resources across different applications or across the same version of the same application. It's just, it's very complicated, and we definitely want to support that. One thing that we do want to do is we want to make sure that Eclipse and Ant work seamlessly. Our approach is you live in the IDE. We do Eclipse, but IntelliJ, why not, or any other tool. You use the great feature that Todd just showed you today. But then at the end of the day, if you do some configuration, you add some dependency or whatever, and you want to put that on your build server, you shouldn't have to maintain 2 different projects. And so that's one of the things that we are trying to do. So how do you share code and resources? So we kind of have 3 ways of doing that right now. The first way is by using Java project. In Eclipse, it's really a shortcut across, a shortcut for generating a jar file and putting that in another project. It doesn't work in Ant. You could do some custom work in Ant. I would recommend against using that, but if you want to, it's up to you. Library project. So this is something that we introduced a while ago, and we are definitely committed to do that. This is the right way of sharing code and resources across Android applications. It's still available only as source, compile time version. We're working on a binary distribution for that. We're starting to see exactly what we need to do there. Other systems like Maven actually support some sort of binary compilation, and so if you absolutely need that, you can use Maven. And then the third one is jar files. So jar files is pretty easy, right? You go online, you find some random open source library that does what you want. You click download, you put your jar file into your project, and you're done. So that works great when you have a small project. When you have a bigger project with a lot of libraries and a lot of jar files, you can get into some serious problem. So let's look at an example here. Let's say you have an application, you have 3 library projects, and each of them actually use a jar file. That's a very simple case. As a human, you see that and you say, hey, that's easy. All I need is the V2 version of the library because the other one are redundant. Of course, our build system doesn't really work that way. The previous version was very, I would say, stupid. It would actually take all 3 versions of the jar file because each of those libraries have a copy of that file, right? So it would actually send all 3 versions of the jar to the DX tool, which converts into Dalvik bytecode. It would process the first jar file, then process the second one, and on the first class of that jar, it would complain saying, hey, I already know about this class, and then build breakage. I'm sure you've seen this infamous, class already added error. So this is a very simple example. Very quickly, if you add more library, if you have a jar file that will bring some other dependencies, it just gets very complex very quickly. And the really right way of doing that is, fixing that is to have a real dependency management system, something like Maven or Ivy. And we definitely want to get there. We're just not there at the moment, but we're working on it. We do want great IDE support. So we're still looking at what we're going to do. In the meantime, we do want to help you with the most common use case. So a couple of months ago, we released an update that would support the case where, let's say you have 2 library projects, and in each of them you have a jar file, say the support library, and you want that to work. So we introduced a very simple conflict resolution system. Now, something like Maven will actually identify jar file by group ID, artifact ID, version, and you have a very clear understanding of what a library is, of what a jar file is. Here, we don't really have that information because all we have is the file. So we just purely base that on file name. So if you have plenty of library projects, all of them have the support library, we're going to identify all the duplicates of Android-support-v4.jar. And then we're going to make sure that they're all the same exact file. And by that, I don't mean like the version, because we don't know about that. We just compare the file itself. If they're all the same, that's great. We just pick one of them randomly. And then we just discard all the rest, and then we basically get rid of duplicates. If we find a file that's different, then we're going to actually generate an error. So typical use case, you have 2 library projects. You get the newer version of the library support that we released yesterday, but you only copy it in one of those projects. Or you copy it in both, but you submit it only in one of the Git project and not the other one, and then your coworker complains, that kind of thing, and then we'll detect that. We did add a very simple custom support for the library support, actually, because the v13 version actually embeds the v4 inside. Now, if we were using something like Maven, for instance, we would actually not have v4 inside. We would just say that depends on v4. But right now, this contains it. So if we detect both v4 and v13, we will drop v4 and just use v13. So as I said, this is very basic. We really want to get to a really good build system that will do a better dependency management for you. And that this is a very high priority. We're just not there yet. So on the implementation side, Eclipse and Ant were working very differently with jar files. In Eclipse, you had to manually go and reference every jar file into your project. And so it would be even worse than that, because if a library project manually say, hey, I used that jar file, and you had 20 applications using that library project, you would have to go in all those 20 applications and manually also add that jar file. In Ant, you just drop it into the libs folder, and it just works. So we wanted to simplify that and make that the same way for Eclipse also. So this is what we're doing now. If you're manually referencing jar project into Eclipse, don't. Stop doing it. Just drop them into the libs folder with an S. Apparently, plenty of people were using lib without an S, and it did not work. So just libs, and then we will automatically pick the right one. So on the Eclipse side, we have a dynamic container, which is an Eclipse way of having a class path container that's dynamically generated or dynamically filled by our plugin. And we do the resolution, we drop duplicates, and we just put what the application needs, and we pick up whatever is coming through the library project as well. So we just grab everything that your application needs. So that was released a couple of months ago in 17. When we did that, we completely forgot that dynamic container prevents you from actually doing source attachment. This is really silly, but you can't. And we could fix the UI to do it, but the real solution is to make sure that wherever you have a jar, you actually have a source attachment specific to that jar, so that if you have 5 applications using the same library project that depends on a jar file, you don't have to do the source attachment on all 5 applications. Again, if you had a dependency management system, you wouldn't have that problem because part of your dependency, you would know where the source is. So in the meantime, we have a very simple solution. It looks like a bit of a hack, I'll admit, but it works. So if you have foo.jar somewhere in a library project, just create foo.jar.properties, and just create those 2 properties in there, linking to the source and document, and it will just be picked up automatically for you. All right, so library project, more improvement. We have merging of manifest now. So before, if you had an activity that was declared in a library, it wouldn't be picked up by the application, even if you put it in the manifest. So we do have that now. We'll merge things like permissions, activities, services, things like that. It's basic. If you have a conflict, it will fail. We're working on adding that, being able to say, ignore, like I know that library declared that permission, but I don't want it, or I don't want that activity. So we're working on that kind of thing. Because of that, it's not enabled by default, but if you want to try it, in your project properties, declare manifest merger.enabled equal true, and it will be enabled for you. In 17, we also introduced build-config.java. This is a class that generated for you during build time. It's very basic. It declares a Boolean that's true for debug build, false for release. So in Eclipse, if you do an export, that's a release. Otherwise, it's debug. And then in Ant, it's depending on if you do Ant debug or Ant release. It's very basic. The one use case really that we decided to introduce that for is this one. Please stop logging too much information. The log buffer is shared across all applications. And especially don't log information that is customer sensitive, like their information. That would be nice. So just put that, and then when we compile a release, we'll just basically it will be the equivalent of if false, and the Java compiler will just discard that code. You can use that also for whatever else you want, but this is one important use case. Finally, we've made a lot of improvement to ProGuard. We've tweaked a lot the current rules, and also what we did is we used to only be able to reference one single ProGuard file into your project.properties. We changed that to be able to reference to more than one file, and we provide a default rule into the SDK folder, and you can reference to it using the SDK.gear property. So now you can have your own rule file that we will never touch. So whenever you do an Android update project, we'll never clobber your changes. And then we can safely improve the ProGuard rule as needed, because I think a lot of people actually had obsolete ProGuard file because of that. One other thing that we did is that we have two versions of it. We have the optimized and non-optimized version. Earlier version of Android really don't deal well with ProGuard optimization. So we just provide those two, depending on which version you're targeting. It's up to you to choose which one you want. Another thing that we did is we used to be very conservative about removing unused classes because ProGuard doesn't know about XML. So now AAPT is able to output another rule file that we use, and so we know exactly which XML file are being used. And so we are much more aggressive into removing classes. So if you use something that the library project, the support library for just one particular small item that you want, everything else will get removed for you, and you'll get a much smaller application. All right, Lint. Again.
Didn't we just talk about
Right, yes.
Yeah, we had a different order earlier. So I'm just going to show a couple of other things regarding Lint. Actually, this is my window. So Lint I showed it running in Eclipse, but it does not require Eclipse. So in fact, I think IntelliJ has integrated Lint as well, and you can also run on the command line. So if I go in here and I type Lint and I point to a particular project, sorry, wrong directory. It basically just runs through the code and spits out the errors. This is not a very useful format, so it actually has several output formats. So I can do lint-html and pick a particular file name like that. And when it runs it now, it creates a report that I can then open. So when I do that, I get something like this, which is basically, it's showing the same errors I already explained to you, but it's a bit more readable. We include the descriptions right here. We inlined for example, in the case of the mismatched string format, you can see both cases of the source inlined right here. So this is kind of useful. So thank you. I think the main use case for this is that even though you can run Lint during your development, you really want to run it continuously on a server along with your unit tests, right? So I hope that you're familiar with Jenkins, which is a very easy to set up continuous integration server. And someone has actually contributed a Lint integration for Jenkins. So if you just go to the available plugins, you can pick it right there and install it. And then you can set up a job like this one. So this is the API samples from the AOSP project. If you look here, you can see this trend graph, which is showing the number of Lint warnings, currently around 1,200. Luckily, there aren't very many red ones, but we can drill into this and see and take a look at them. So let's see so this is basically showing all the different folders, and we can switch by category as well. So here we have a folder that has a red error, and I can drill in to look at it, and we can see, actually, what is this one?
Missing translation.
There's a missing translation. I saw a worse one earlier. I guess I picked a different one. This is the one I think I was going to look at. Correctness. Yes. So here we have someone has actually used an underscore instead of a colon in their attribute, so this has no effect. So I'm sad to say this is actually, all these errors you're seeing is actually Lint running on the current samples that we're shipping with AOSP. So we have a bit of a cleanup job to do. So let me quickly show you how this is set up. If you go to configure, all I've done is add these two commands here. It basically, like I showed you, you can do --HTML to export an HTML report. I'm doing that here so that users can click on the HTML report right from the builds. They can also emit XML reports, and that's what the plugin is using. So that's basically, how you would set up Lint running so that you can basically blame people, when they increase the error count. At the fireside yesterday, someone asked, well, can I add my own Lint rules? And the answer is yes, you can. And it's actually pretty easy. So I'm just going to very briefly show you how to do that. So the use case for this would be that if, let's say in your company, you have a custom view and you want to make sure that there's some attribute that is always set. So my detector. So to do this, you basically need two classes. And where did you put them? OK, two classes. An issue registry, which is as simple as this, just register this issue. And the detector class, which basically has this description, ID, summary. And we tell Lint, hey, these are the elements I relate to. This is my custom view. And when you hit this element, check that it has the attribute. So the way you would do this is you build this file, you get this custom lint jar file, you copy that to your .android lint folder. Oh. And now when I run lint, it should, yes, it basically is showing the error, it's showing the detector that it is added. So I can now run lint, and I can check this specific issue on this project, and it should now emit, yes, the warning that we had in this detector. So this is pretty simple. The APIs are evolving, but it can be done today. So I think that's it for Lint for me.
Excellent. All right, so that was it for demonstration. A quick, information about our team. We work directly in OSP, so if you want to see what we are doing, like Tor showed you some things that are coming, you could go and get it and try it. We have a tools site where we regularly post information, and sometimes we post preview also. So we encourage you to try it and give us feedback. And then if you have questions, if you want to help us to contribute, our ADT Dev mailing list is there. You can find us on Google+ also. And we have 2.5 minutes for questions. There's 2 mics here and there, but if you want, we'll be at the office hours right after. So if you have any question, we'll be happy to answer. Thank you. Yes.
So I had a question about relative layout. And I use it a lot. It's very useful. However, when I start to refactor elements in it, it messes up the orientation because it doesn't refactor the IDs and the other elements that are kind of,
OK. I guess I should go and look at that.
It's more bug report, I guess.
Would you mind filing a bug? b.android.com, just with the details for how to reproduce it. Right. Any other questions?
Yes, I'm working on a project right now where I have 5 APKs at once and probably more in the future, and some libraries. Is there anything you can say for multi-APK support? Because I just got all these bash scripts and with and for loops right now, and it's getting really clunky.
You mean building all of them at the same time, or?
Any suggestions for making my life easier? Because I've got a for loop with all these ant scripts in it.
Seems like a good fix. No, I mean, we don't really have a project set up for that. So any kind of automation, a batch file, another ant script, if you have 5 of them, I think another ant script that calls your other ant script might be better than doing some batch magic. Okay. But that's up to you, really. We don't really have anything.
OK, thank you. Keep it in mind for the future.
Yes.
Right.
Hey, I've noticed that you've kind of been slowly ramping up support for go-to definition to layout files and string definitions from within the code, as opposed to actually just going to the R object, the generated object definition. And I was just wondering, it seems like I kind of don't know where, when that's implemented and when it's not implemented. It'd be nice if I could just always hit F3 and go to the in-code definition. Are you planning to continue to support more types of go-to definition, or what's the plan with that?
Right now, in Java files, it'll always go to the R file. And the reason for that is that we don't have a way to actually give R resolver higher priority than the built-in Java one. So that's kind of how it works.
It's kind of an Eclipse thing?
It's Eclipse, yeah. We don't have the option to sort of say, hey, ours is more important than the Java one. Because when you jump from a R definition to a actual field, that's the Java one. Going to the XML files, that's ours. And we don't have a way to say, ours is more important, let us come in first.
But it is, in some places, implemented from the XML files, right?
Yes, from XML, yeah.
Okay.
Those should always do the right thing. If they don't, please file a bug.
I don't think they work for strings, but I might have just not checked.
They're supposed to. So if they don't, what they didn't work for, which recently was fixed and I didn't have time to show it, but is they now should work for theme references. So the question mark thing, that didn't used to work, it should now.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay, we're run out of time.
Sorry.
As we said, we'll be at the office hours on the 3rd floor over there, so feel free to come and ask us questions. We will be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.